Hello, and thank you for joining the Building Upon the AAP Foundation After the Plans Are Done module powered by DCI Consulting. The information in this PowerPoint is provided for general information purposes only, and these materials are not intended to provide legal advice. These copyrighted materials may not be reproduced, copied, or used without prior permission from DCI Consulting. In this training module, we will cover the implementation of the Affirmative Action Plan, stakeholder engagement, self monitoring, and self identification. First, we will discuss implementation and what contractors should focus on after they receive the results of their Affirmative Action Plan. So, after you receive your plan, you should become acquainted with the results. We understand that this can be overwhelming to some, so on this slide, we've listed 6 areas to review and understand first. Job groups are the foundation of the Affirmative Action Plan. Becoming familiar with which job titles fall within each job group will be critical to understanding your results. Review the job group analysis, which lays out the incumbency for each job group. After you have a handle on job groups, review the source of statistics report, which serves as the foundation for placement goal calculation. Are your typical hiring patterns accurately reflected in the source of statistics and factor availability tables? Check that the recruitment areas and feeder groups make sense. Next, review the placement goal areas to determine which job groups have goals this year and if any of the goals present are reoccurring. This is a great way to identify a year-over-year trend. Next, you'll want to check on the progress towards the previous year's goals, especially if there are reoccurring goals. This will help you understand if progress was made toward those goals through promotions and new hires into the job groups in question. The last piece on this list is the review of your personnel activity analytics to monitor hires, promotions, and terminations. At, After you've become familiar with the plan, it's important to report the results to the proper stakeholders and communicate the areas where you've determined that action is needed. We'll chat more about possible stakeholders to include later in this training. Contractors should create an action oriented program to address any specific barriers to equal opportunity that are identified. In creating an action oriented program, you want to determine who will be involved in addressing the specific barriers, what the immediate steps will be to address those barriers, and how you will track your progress toward correction. So, what should your organization do after discovering that there are areas of underutilization for women, minorities, and or individuals with disabilities? We briefly touched on those action-oriented programs in the previous slide, which will be your starting place. Alongside the action-oriented program, ensure the organization is demonstrating good faith efforts to reach out to women, minorities, and individuals with disabilities with a focus on job groups and protected groups with placement goals. This can be achieved by casting the recruitment net wider, going to career fairs, engaging with advocacy groups, and recruiting from schools in which desired skill sets are taught. Be sure to maintain records of all good faith efforts and assess external outreach in recruitment areas. Last and most important, focus on the goal area in general. The focus should not be on numbers or percentages. So, what should you do when statistical disparities have been identified? Having a statistical disparity does not necessarily mean discrimination. However, don't let evidence of a disparity go without proper investigation. First, research all areas of impact. Understand which job groups or titles have flags. Then, verify the accuracy of the data, including applicant disposition codes and termination reasons. Next, think about the selection process for the groups in question. For example, how are employees being selected for promotion? When it comes to the hiring process, what are the basic qualifications for the jobs in question? Is there an opportunity to structure the interview process? Check whether there are tests or other standardized selection tools, and if so, determine if the tests have been validated for the job as defined in the Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures. The burden falls to the employer to demonstrate job relatedness and business necessity of selection tools. Did you consider alternative selection procedures? This line of thinking is critical to understanding why disparities may exist. Here are a few targeted ways to investigate areas specific to the type of flag. For applicants and hires, start by determining why certain applicants were selected over others. Consider reviewing records such as applications, resumes, structured interview notes, and test scores. For promotions, a good starting place is determining why certain employees were promoted. Were all employees in the pool eligible for promotion? Was this movement competitive or in line? For terminations, determine what the reasons are behind terminations. Records to review include performance evaluations and exit interviews. Your investigation may lead to more questions, which is great. This would be the time to decide if follow up analyses are needed, like a steps analysis or a component analysis. Here is an example scenario from the OFCCP's Technical Assistance Guide for Supply and Service Contractors. So, this made up contractor identified a problem area, which is high turnover for females in job group 3B, mid level technicians, comprised of technician 2 and technician 3 positions. The majority of placements into the group come from non competitive promotions out of the entry level job group 3A, technician 1. Employees move from Technician 2 to Technician 3 by competitive promotions, and Technician 3 is the feeder position for competitive promotion into Job Group 3C, which is the senior technician positions. And those senior technician positions involve management training and are a feeder pool for entry level management positions. Upon identifying that job group 3B had an unusually high turnover for females, the contractor decided to take various actions, starting with determining the reasons behind the turnover rate and then designing methods to reduce or eliminate it. The first step in this example is determining the reason for turnover. They talk about initiating a standard policy of conducting exit interviews that will provide the contractor with one best practice method of analyzing turnover. Even involuntary separations can provide a company with useful information regarding its working environment. Therefore, exit interviews could be conducted with all outgoing employees. Other useful data regarding turnover can come from elements of a company's audit and reporting systems, such as data, and data can often serve to confirm information derived from exit interviews. For example, if a majority of the 3B females stated in their interviews that they were leaving because it was impossible to get promoted, the company should then look at their personnel activity analysis of all promotions both within and out of that job group. In other words, they should review both the internal job group promotions from Tech 2 to Tech 3, as well as the promotions out of the job group from Tech 3 to Senior Tech, which is Job Group 3C. Similarly, if compensation was raised as an issue, the company's compensation analysis could identify if there was a problem with women being paid less than men in the same positions. Next, the example scenario discusses how to design action steps to remedy the identified problems. So, keeping on with the same example, through reviewing the exit interviews and analyses, the contractor determined that the primary reason behind the high turnover rate is the belief that female technicians will not get promoted. So, some of the options a company can take to remedy the issue include reviewing the job requirements for promotion to ensure that there is nothing that would impose barriers for females, and implementing appropriate revisions to the requirements as necessary. They can also conduct periodic affirmative action and equal opportunity training for all individuals involved in the selection process. They can ensure that all promotional opportunities are posted and available to all qualified employees. They can institute both formal and informal development programs to assist employees in identifying and preparing for promotional opportunities. And last, they can establish a temporary oversight system for promotions specific to this particular job group. All right. So now that we've covered implementation and action oriented programs, let's talk about who should be included in the implementation process. An AAP implementation dream team can include leadership and managers, stakeholders from the diversity, equity, and inclusion team, hiring managers, and recruiters. So, after you've determined who will be on the AAP Dream Team, how do you bring everyone up to speed and hold them accountable for implementation? Well, we would recommend synchronizing AAP implementation to the natural rhythm of your organization. For example, when engaging leadership, consider an annual affirmative action training and debrief. This is something they can look forward to on an annual basis. Additionally, to further engagement and dedication, consider including a commitment to affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion in yearly goal setting or leadership competencies. For hiring managers, consider developing a hiring manager's protocol covering job description guidelines and competency based structured interview guidelines. Additionally, include an annual affirmative action training and debrief tailored to hiring managers and ensure consistent communication regarding affirmative action. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team can help align plan results to the organization's mission, vision, goals, and DEI initiatives. They are also uniquely suited to build relationships with organizations representing protected group members. They can also assist in creating company sponsored training and development programs. They should receive an annual affirmative action training and debrief as well. During this debrief, it would be nice to demonstrate how their efforts are impacting the organization's affirmative action results. The last stakeholder group on this list is recruiters. We would suggest that recruiters engage in specialized or targeted recruiting opportunities and pay special attention to recruiting events that align with job groups that have goals. Recruiters can also work with HR and compliance to list qualified job openings with the appropriate employment service delivery system. And similar to the other stakeholder groups, recruiters should receive an annual affirmative action training and debrief. Consider providing an annual disposition code training refresher to ensure recruiters understand the importance of dispositions as it relates to OCCP compliance and the Internet Applicant Rule. Additionally, contractors must deliver further trainings to meet their compliance requirements. All recruitment and selection personnel must receive training on compliance and affirmative action, EEO policies and practices. All managers must receive training on protected class harassment and related policies. All individuals involved in personnel decisions, such as selection, promotion, and related processes, should be trained in affirmative action, EEO, obligations to ensure commitments are implemented. So, after you've implemented an action oriented program with the proper stakeholders, how do you determine if your organization is making progress toward EEO? The answer is self monitoring. Contractors must develop and implement an internal audit and reporting system that periodically measures the effectiveness of its total affirmative action plan, including the review of personnel transactions such as hires, promotions, and terminations, and progress towards goals, including individuals with disabilities and veterans, minorities, and females. As a contractor, Self monitoring allows your organization to catch and address issues earlier, stay on top of data integrity, and track achievement towards goals. It is up to the contractor to decide how often self audits take place. We would suggest that your organization decide on a monitoring schedule that makes sense and aligns to your organizational rhythms. You can decide on a mid year self audit 6 months into the plan year. This is preferred by many contractors because if audited 6 months or more into the plan year, contractors must also submit mid year updates to the OFCCP. By engaging in mid year self audits proactively, your organization will be prepared if and when an audit is scheduled. Your organization can also consider quarterly reviews or reviewing with a more targeted timeline. For example, after increased hiring of seasonal workers during the holiday season. So, as you engage in self monitoring, there are some key areas that the organization should verify. The biggest piece is making sure your data is accurate and complete. Consider reviewing applicant flow data by requisition. For example, review dispositions on all requisitions filled since the last self monitoring period to ensure filled requisitions have final dispositions for all applicants. Confirm that you have proper race and sex data for all hires. Check for other missing data points that will be necessary for analysis. And monitor any data inaccuracies discovered during the data checks phase of the affirmative action plan development. Engage in more frequent checks of the data, and this will make for a smooth and seamless annual affirmative action plan process. Additionally, you should monitor and assess the current outreach and recruitment efforts the organization engages in. DCI has a nifty resource to help with this requirement. Reach out to your consultant for more information. The assessment of external outreach and recruitment efforts is essential and required. Contractors must conduct an annual self assessment of outreach and recruitment efforts for protected veterans and individuals with disabilities. Contractors must also document evaluation of outreach and recruitment activity, including the criteria used for evaluation and the conclusion about its effectiveness. If your organization concludes that the totality of efforts were not effective, you must implement alternatives and maintain documentation for 3 years. Another piece of self assessment is the review of personnel processes. This ensures that personnel processes provide for careful, thorough, and systematic consideration of the job qualifications of applicants and employees with known disabilities for job vacancies and training opportunities. It also ensures that personnel processes do not stereotype disabled persons or limit access to jobs for which they qualify. And it describes periodic reviews of such processes and obligations to modify if necessary. OFCCP also requires the periodic review of physical and mental qualifications. This should include a statement describing a schedule for the review of all physical and mental job qualifications. And engaging in this review really ensures that qualification standards are job related and consistent with business necessity. So let's talk about the self identification process. Federal contractors are required to collect self identification for the race or ethnicity, sex, protected veteran status, and disability status. This identification is voluntary for the individual completing the survey and is recommended to provide an opt out option. This information should be requested both pre and post offer for applicants. As a note, the EEO-1 Joint Reporting Committee requires that race, ethnicity, and sex information be obtained for all employees. If an employee does not identify, the employer should complete a visual identification of race, ethnicity, and/or sex, but not for veteran or disability status. Additionally, OFCCP requires that contractors solicit updated disability status of their workforce every 5 years with at least one reminder between intervals. For security purposes, self ID forms should be separate from a candidate's application, and data should be stored separately and only accessible by applicable professionals. This is an example of the required disability self ID form. This form is mandated and cannot be altered. There is no mandated form for race, sex, or veteran status. Oftentimes, clients ask us how to increase their voluntary self ID response rates. Engaging in a self ID campaign is one of the most common ways to meet self ID requirements and increase response rates. Consider bringing a team together, including communications professionals and diversity and inclusion, to create a campaign that highlights the importance of self identification for your organization. Some additional tips for increasing response rates are communication and transparency on how self ID forms will be used, ensuring confidentiality because you want to make employees feel that their data is safe with you, providing support such as training and frequently asked questions, providing employee friendly methods of updating self identification, using employee resource groups or ERGs to spread the word, and last, highlighting internal programs related to protected groups. For more information on self ID, please visit the Laws, Regulations, and Basic Introductions module or the All Things Applicant module. There are other training modules available. Please visit the client portal to see what topics will be covered in each module. Thank you for joining today.